Marquis de la Tour d'Azur had an appointment with M. de Circadia in the country on Sunday. He drove out early in the day to Meudon. He brought a copy of the latest issue of
The Acts of the Apostles
in his pocket. This journal's witty jokes about the revolutionaries greatly entertained the Lord of Gavrillac. The newspaper's venomous scorn for those worthless scoundrels gave him some comfort. It helped him forget the discomforts of being forced away from his home by their detestable actions. M. de la Tour d'Azur had visited the Lord of Gavrillac at Meudon twice in the past month. Seeing Aline looking so sweet, fresh, and bright-minded had rekindled old feelings. These were feelings he thought had died completely under the ashes of the past. He wanted her as much as one wants heaven. This was likely the purest passion of his life. If he had felt this way earlier, he might have been a vastly different man. The cruelest wound he had ever received in his selfish life was when she rejected him. After the disgraceful riot at the Feydeau Theatre, she had sent him a firm message saying she could not see him again under any circumstances. That one riot had robbed him of a mistress he valued and a wife he deeply needed for his soul. His cheap love for La Binet might have consoled him for losing his exalted love for Aline. In the same way, he had been ready to sacrifice his attachment to La Binet for his love for Aline. But that ill-timed riot had robbed him of both women at once. He had kept his word to Sautron and completely broken things off with La Binet. But then he found out Aline had completely broken things off with him. By the time he had recovered enough from his grief to think about La Binet again, the actress had vanished without a trace. He blamed André-Louis bitterly for all of this. That low-born provincial peasant pursued him like a curse. He had truly become the evil genius of his life. That was exactly it, the evil genius of his life. And there was a high chance that on Monday. He did not like to think about Monday. He was not particularly afraid of death. Like others of his social class, he was brave enough. He was too brave in a normal sense, and too confident in his own skills, to even consider the possibility of dying in a duel. But it felt like the ultimate bitter ending to all the evil he had suffered because of André-Louis Moreau. Dying by that man's hand would be a fitting, if terrible, conclusion. He could almost hear that insolent, pleasant voice casually announcing his death to the National Assembly on Monday morning. He shook off the mood and felt angry at himself for entertaining such thoughts. It was overly emotional nonsense. After all, Chabrolain and La Motroyot were exceptionally good swordsmen, but neither of them came close to his own formidable skill level. His confidence began to return as he drove through the country lanes, which were flooded with pleasant September sunshine. His spirits lifted. A premonition of victory stirred inside him. He stopped fearing Monday's meeting and actually began to look forward to it. This duel would give him the chance to permanently end the persecution he had suffered. He was going to crush this insolent, persistent pest that had been stinging him at every turn. Carried upward by this wave of optimism, he started to feel more hopeful about his chances with Aline. During their first meeting a month ago, he had been completely honest with her. He had told her the real reason he went to the Feydeau Theatre that night. He had made her realize that she had judged him unfairly. However, he hadn't pushed the matter any further than that. But that was a very good start, and during their last meeting 2 weeks ago, she had welcomed him with open friendliness. True, she had been a little distant, but he expected that until he clearly confessed that he still hoped to win her heart. He felt like a fool for not coming back sooner. Filled with this new confidence that had risen from his previous despair, he arrived at Meudon on Sunday morning. He was cheerful and friendly with M. de Circadia while waiting in the sitting room for Aline to appear. He spoke confidently about the country's future. He wore rose-colored glasses that morning, claiming there were already signs that public opinion was shifting toward a more moderate stance. He believed the nation was finally starting to see where this mob of lawyers was leading them. He pulled out
The Acts of the Apostles
and read a harsh paragraph aloud. Finally, when Aline entered the room, he handed the newspaper over to M. de Circadia. M. de Circadia wanted to give his niece some privacy, so he took the newspaper into the garden. He sat where he could still see them, as his duty required, but he stayed discreetly out of earshot. The Marquis took full advantage of this brief opportunity. He openly confessed his feelings and begged Aline to forgive him. He pleaded with her to at least give him hope that, someday soon, she might consider a closer relationship with him.
Mademoiselle, you must know that my feelings are completely sincere.
He told her, his voice vibrating with undeniable emotion.
The fact that I have remained so devoted to you should prove it. It was fair that you banished me, because I proved myself unworthy of the great honor I wanted. But being banished hasn't lessened my devotion at all. If you knew how much I've suffered, you would agree that I have fully paid for my terrible mistake.
She looked at him with a curious, gentle sadness on her beautiful face.
Monsieur, I don't doubt you. I doubt myself. Do you mean your feelings toward me? Yes. But I can understand that, after everything that has happened. It was always this way, monsieur.
She interrupted quietly.
You speak as if you lost me because of your own actions. That is assuming too much. Let me be honest with you, monsieur. I was never yours to lose. I appreciate the honor you do me, and I respect you very much. But then, from such a good beginning,
He cried out, his voice full of hope.
who can guarantee that it is only a beginning? It might be the end of it. If I had truly loved you, monsieur, I would have sent for you after that incident. I wouldn't have condemned you without hearing your side of the story first. But as it turned out,
She shrugged and smiled with a gentle sadness.
you see how it is.
Instead of being crushed, his optimism only grew.
But that gives me hope, mademoiselle. If I already have your respect, I can confidently hope to win more. I will prove myself worthy of you. I swear I will. Anyone who has the privilege of being near you would naturally want to make themselves worthy.
Before she could reply, M. de Circadia burst through the French windows. His reading glasses were pushed up on his forehead. His face was red. He was furiously waving.
The Acts of the Apostles.
He seemed completely speechless with rage. If the Marquis had spoken his thoughts out loud, he would have cursed. Instead, he just bit his lip in frustration at this terrible timing. Aline jumped up, frightened by her uncle's state.
What happened? What happened?
M. de Circadia finally managed to speak.
That scoundrel, that faithless dog. I agreed to forgive his past mistakes on one clear condition. He had to stay away from revolutionary politics. He accepted that condition, and now
He slapped the newspaper furiously.
he has betrayed me again. Not only is he back in politics, but he's actually a member of the National Assembly. And worse, he has been using his deadly skills as a fencing master to become a bully and a hired swordsman. My God, is there any law left in France at all?
M. de la Tour d'Azur had felt one small doubt earlier that threatened his growing optimism. That doubt involved André-Louis Moreau and his relationship with M. de Circadia. He knew they used to be close. He also knew their relationship had been ruined by Moreau's ungrateful decision to turn against his godfather's social class. What the Marquis didn't know was that they had recently reconciled. André-Louis had broken his promise to avoid politics a month ago, and since then, he hadn't dared to visit Meudon. By sheer luck, Moreau's name hadn't come up during the Marquis's previous 2 visits. Now, the Marquis learned about their reconciliation, but he also learned that the relationship was broken again. In fact, the gap between them seemed wider and more permanent than ever. So, he didn't hesitate to state his own position.
There is a law.
The Marquis answered.
It is the very law that this reckless young man uses himself. The law of the sword.
He spoke very seriously, almost with sadness, because he knew he had to tread carefully.
You shouldn't assume that he can continue his career of evil and murder forever. Sooner or later, he will face a sword that will avenge all his victims. You might have noticed that my cousin, Chaberlain, is one of this assassin's victims. He was killed last Tuesday. If I haven't offered my condolences, Azur, it's because my anger is blocking out every other feeling right now. The scoundrel! You say that sooner or later he will meet a sword that will avenge the others. I pray that it happens soon.
The Marquis answered him calmly, with only sorrow in his voice.
I think your prayer will be answered. This wretched young man has a duel scheduled for tomorrow. and his account may be permanently settled then.
He spoke with such calm certainty that his words sounded like a death sentence. The news instantly stopped de Circadia's angry outburst. The red color drained from his face, and pure fear filled his pale eyes. His reaction showed de la Tour-d'Azur clearly that his angry words had just been a heat-of-the-moment reaction. His prayer for his godson's quick punishment hadn't been genuine at all. Now that he was faced with the reality of that punishment, de Circadia's natural gentleness and kindness took over. His deep affection for the boy resurfaced. Suddenly, whatever terrible things André-Louis had done seemed completely unimportant compared to the threat against his life. De Circadia licked his dry lips.
"Who is this duel with?"
he asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. De la Tour-d'Azur bowed his handsome head and stared at the shiny wooden floor.
"With me,"
he answered quietly. His heart tightened as he realized his answer would cause panic. He heard Aline gasp softly, and he saw de Circadia physically recoil. He quickly jumped into the explanation he felt was necessary.
"Because of his relationship with you, de Circadia, and because I respect you so deeply, I tried my best to avoid this. I avoided it even though the death of my dear friend and cousin Chaberlain demanded action. I avoided it even when my friends started criticizing me for being too cautious. But yesterday, this out-of-control young man made it impossible for me to hold back any longer. He deliberately provoked me in public. He insulted me in the worst possible way, and tomorrow morning in the Bois de Boulogne, we meet."
He stumbled over his words at the end, fully aware of the hostile atmosphere in the room. He had expected hostility from de Circadia based on his sudden change in mood, but Aline's hostility caught him by surprise. He began to realize how many problems this duel was going to cause for him. It was a brand new obstacle blocking the path he thought he had just cleared. Still, his pride and his need for justice wouldn't let him back down. He looked back and forth between the uncle and niece. His usually bold and direct gaze was now oddly evasive. He realized with deep bitterness that even if he killed André-Louis tomorrow, André-Louis would still get his revenge. He hadn't been exaggerating when he thought André-Louis Moreau was the evil genius of his life. He saw clearly that no matter what he did, even if he killed the man, he could never truly defeat him. André-Louis Moreau would always have the last word. The Marquis felt a wave of bitterness, rage, and humiliation, a feeling he rarely experienced. This realization only made him more determined to fight, even though he knew it wouldn't solve anything. On the outside, he remained calm and composed, acting like a man who regretfully accepts his unavoidable fate. It was impossible to criticize his behavior, and it was equally impossible to change his mind about the duel. de Circadia clearly saw this.
"My God,"
was all de Circadia said. It was barely a whisper, sounding more like a groan. As always, de la Tour-d'Azur did the polite thing. He took his leave. He knew that staying around after delivering such devastating news would be inappropriate and rude. He left feeling a bitterness that matched his earlier optimism. The sweet fruit of hope had turned to poison the moment it touched his lips. Oh, yes, the last word would always belong to André-Louis Moreau. Always. The uncle and niece looked at each other as he walked out, both with horror in their eyes. Aline's face was deathly pale. She stood there wringing her hands as if she were in physical pain.
"Why didn't you ask him? Beg him?"
She stopped mid-sentence.
"What good would it do? He was right, and there are some things you simply cannot ask. It would be a useless humiliation to even try."
He sat down heavily with a groan.
"Oh, the poor boy. The poor, misguided boy."
Neither of them had any doubt about how the duel would end. La Tour-d'Azur's calm confidence had been infectious. They knew he wasn't just bragging. Everyone knew how dangerous he was with a sword.
"Why does humiliation matter? A life is at stake here. André's life." "I know. My God. Don't I know? I would humiliate myself if I thought it would actually work. But Azur is a hard, relentless man, and—"
Aline suddenly walked away from him. She caught up with the Marquis just as he was stepping into his carriage. He turned around when she called his name and bowed.
Mademoiselle?
He immediately guessed why she was there. He could already taste the bitter feeling of having to refuse her request. Still, when she invited him, he stepped back into the cool shade of the entrance hall. A carved black oak table stood in the middle of the black and white checkered marble floor. He stopped next to it, leaning lightly against the wood, while she sat in a large crimson chair beside it.
Monsieur, I cannot let you leave like this,
She said.
You don't understand, monsieur, how completely devastated my uncle will be if something terrible and permanent happens to his godson tomorrow. Those angry things he said earlier. Mademoiselle, I understood what he really meant. Please, don't upset yourself. Believe me, I am deeply saddened by this whole situation, which I never expected to happen. You must believe me when I say that. It is all I can offer you. Does it really have to be all? André is very dear to his godfather.
Her pleading tone hurt him like a knife. Then, it suddenly sparked a different emotion, an emotion he knew was completely unworthy of him. Given his massive aristocratic pride, this feeling felt dirty, but he couldn't push it down. He hesitated to even speak it aloud. He hesitated to suggest something so horrible that he might actually view a man of such low birth as a romantic rival. Yet, that sudden flash of jealousy was stronger than his monstrous pride.
And what about you, mademoiselle? What is this André-Louis Moreau to you? Forgive me for asking, but I need to understand this clearly.
As he watched her, a bright red blush spread across her face. At first, he thought she was just embarrassed. Then, the flash in her blue eyes told him she was actually angry. That made him feel better. Since he had insulted her, her anger was reassuring. He didn't realize her anger might be coming from a different place entirely.
André and I have played together since we were babies. He is very dear to me, too. I almost think of him as a brother. If I ever needed help and my uncle wasn't around, André is the very first person I would go to. Does that answer your question, monsieur? Or is there something else you want me to confess?
He bit his lip. He felt off balance today. Otherwise, he never would have asked such a silly, offensive question. He bowed very low.
Mademoiselle, please forgive me for bothering you with that question. Your answer was more complete than I could have hoped or wished for.
He didn't say anything else. He waited for her to keep talking. She sat in silence for a moment, unsure what to do. She frowned slightly, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. Finally, she threw herself against the cold, polite wall he had built up.
I came here, monsieur, to beg you to cancel this duel.
She saw his dark eyebrows lift slightly. She saw the faintly apologetic smile that barely touched his lips, and she kept talking rapidly.
What honor can you possibly win from a fight like this, monsieur?
It was a clever attack on his aristocratic pride. She knew his pride was his strongest trait, one that often led him into trouble but also pushed him to do good things.
I am not fighting for honor, mademoiselle, but for justice, as much as I hate to say it. I didn't ask for this duel, as I already explained. It was forced on me, and my honor will not allow me to back down. But why would it be dishonorable to spare his life? Surely no one would question your courage, monsieur. No one could misunderstand your reasons. You are wrong, mademoiselle. People would definitely misunderstand my reasons. You seem to forget that this young man has built quite a reputation over the last week. That reputation might make any man think twice before facing him.
She dismissed his argument almost rudely, thinking he was just making excuses.
Maybe some men would hesitate, yes, but not you, le Marquis.
Her absolute faith in him was incredibly flattering, but there was a bitter reality hiding behind her sweet words.
Yes, even me, mademoiselle, I promise you. And there is more to it than that. This fight Moreau has forced on me isn't a new issue. It is simply the final result of a long, ongoing campaign of harassment. A campaign you started.
She interrupted.
You have to be fair, monsieur. I hope it isn't in my nature to be unfair, mademoiselle. Then you have to consider that you killed his friend. I don't feel guilty about that at all. The situation justified my actions, and everything that has happened in this crazy country since then proves I was right. And
She hesitated, looking away from him for the first time.
that you, what about Mademoiselle Binet? He was supposed to marry her.
He stared at her in pure shock for a moment.
Supposed to marry her?
He repeated, sounding both disbelieving and horrified.
You didn't know? How do you know? Didn't I tell you we are basically brother and sister? He trusts me. He told me everything before you ruined everything.
He looked away, resting his chin in his hand. He looked thoughtful, upset, and almost sad.
It seems,
He said slowly, as if thinking aloud.
that some strange fate connects that man and me, keeps throwing us into each other's paths.
He sighed, then turned back to face her, speaking more sharply.
Mademoiselle, until right now, I had no idea about this. I didn't even suspect it, but
He stopped, thought for a moment, and shrugged.
if I wronged him, I didn't do it on purpose. It isn't fair to blame me for that. In life, it's the intention behind an action that really matters. But doesn't knowing this change anything? Not that I can see, mademoiselle. It doesn't give me a good enough excuse to back out of a duel I am fully committed to. In fact, nothing could be a better excuse than my desire to save my good friend, your uncle, from pain. And to save you from pain as well, mademoiselle.
She stood up suddenly and faced him directly. She was desperate now. She had to play the only card she thought she had left.
Monsieur,
She said.
earlier today you honored me by talking about certain hopes you had for us.
He looked at her, almost afraid. He stayed quiet, not daring to speak, waiting for her to finish.
You need to understand something, monsieur. If you go through with this duel, unless you cancel your meeting in the Bois tomorrow morning, you are never allowed to mention those hopes to me again. In fact, you are never to come near me again.
By phrasing it as a threat, she had gone as far as she possibly could. It was up to him to step through the door she had just thrown wide open and make a positive promise.
Mademoiselle, you can't be serious. I am completely serious, monsieur. This is my final word, please understand that.
He looked at her with miserable eyes. His handsome, masculine face was paler than she had ever seen it. The hand he had reached out in protest began to shake. He dropped his hand back to his side so she wouldn't see it trembling. For a brief second, a war waged inside him. It was a bitter battle between what he wanted and what he believed his honor demanded. He never realized how much his stubborn desire for revenge was actually disguised as
honor.
He believed backing down was impossible without feeling ashamed. To him, shame was an unbearable torture. She was asking for too much. She didn't understand what she was demanding. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so unfair and unreasonable. But he also knew it would be completely useless to try and explain it to her. This was the end. Even if he killed André-Louis Moreau in the morning, which he desperately hoped to do, André-Louis Moreau would still win in death. He bowed very low. His face was as serious and sad as his heart.
Mademoiselle, I offer you my respect.
He murmured and turned to leave.
But you haven't answered me.
She yelled after him, terrified. He stopped in the doorway and turned back. From the cool shadows of the hall, she saw him as a dark, graceful silhouette against the bright sunshine outside. That image of him would stay in her memory as something dark and threatening during the terrible hours that followed.
What do you want me to say, mademoiselle? I was simply trying to save us both the pain of me saying no.
He left, leaving her feeling crushed and furious. She collapsed back into the large red chair. She sat there slumped over, her elbows on the table and her face buried in her hands. Her face was burning with shame and intense emotion. She had offered herself to him, and he had rejected her. The impossible had actually happened. The humiliation of it felt like a stain that could never be washed away. Startled and horrified by everything, she stepped back, pressing her hand against her aching chest. Chapter 10. The Returning Carriage. M. de Circadia wrote a letter.
Godson,
He began, without any kind words to soften the blow.
I have learned with pain and anger that you have disgraced yourself once again. You broke the promise you made to me to stay out of politics. I am even more pained and angry to learn that your name has become a public joke in just a few short days. You have thrown away the weapon of false and tricky arguments against my class, which is the class you owe everything to. Instead, you have taken up the sword of an assassin. I have found out that you have a duel scheduled tomorrow with my good friend, M. de la Tour d'Azur. A gentleman in his position has certain obligations tied to his noble birth. These obligations do not allow him to back out of a duel. However, you do not have to worry about those disadvantages. For a man of your social class, refusing a duel or ignoring one after it is made does not require any real sacrifice. Your equals would probably think you were just being sensibly cautious. Therefore, I am begging you to stop this right now. If I thought I still had any authority over you because of all the favors I have done for you, I would order you to let this matter go no further. I would order you not to show up for your duel tomorrow morning. But your recent behavior makes it clear that I do not have that kind of authority. I have no reason to hope that any sense of gratitude toward me will make you listen to my very serious request. Because of this, I must add one final thing. If you survive tomorrow's duel, I can never, under any circumstances, acknowledge your existence ever again. If you have even a tiny bit of the affection left that you once claimed to have for me, you will not refuse to do what I am asking. This letter is driven mostly by my own affection for you, even though you have done everything possible to destroy it.
It was not a very thoughtful letter. M. de Circadia was not a very thoughtful man. André-Louis read the letter when a groom brought it to him in Paris on that Sunday afternoon. But no matter how he read it, André-Louis only saw concern for M. la Tour d'Azur, whom M. de Circadia called his good friend and his future nephew-in-law. He made the groom wait a full hour while he wrote his reply. It was a short letter, but it took a lot of effort and several failed attempts. In the end, this is what he wrote. My godfather, you make it incredibly hard for me to refuse you when you appeal to my affection. I will spend my entire life looking for chances to prove my affection to you. Because of that, I am more devastated than I can ever express that I cannot give you the proof you are asking for today. There is too much history between M. de la Tour d'Azur and me. Also, you are being very unfair to me and my social class, whatever that class might be. You are wrong when you say that obligations of honor do not apply to us. I take those obligations so seriously that I could not back out now even if I wanted to. If you decide to go through with the harsh punishment you threatened, I will just have to endure it. But you can be absolutely sure that I will suffer. Your affectionate and grateful godson,
André-Louis.
He sent that letter back with M. de Circadia's groom. He assumed that would be the end of the whole situation. The letter hurt him deeply, but he handled the pain with the outward calm that he always liked to show. The next morning, it was 8:15. He was eating breakfast with Le Chapelier, who had come over to eat with him. Just as they were getting up from the table to head to the Bois de Boulogne, his housekeeper surprised him. She announced that Aline de Circadia had arrived. He looked at his watch. His carriage was already waiting at the door, but he had a few minutes to spare. He excused himself from Le Chapelier and walked quickly out to the waiting room. She walked forward to meet him. Her manner was eager, almost feverish.
I will not pretend that I do not know why you are here.
He said quickly, to save time.
But time is running out, and I must warn you that only the strongest reasons will be worth hearing.
His words surprised her. It felt like a rejection right from the start, before she had even said a single word. That was the absolute last thing she had expected from André-Louis. On top of that, he seemed unusually distant with her, and his voice was strangely cold and formal. His coldness hurt her. She had no way of guessing the conclusion he had jumped to. He was making the exact same mistake with her that he had made with his godfather's letter the day before. This was a natural mistake to make, after all. He assumed that her only reason for being there was out of concern for M. de la Tour d'Azur. It never even crossed his mind that she might be worried about him. He was completely convinced about how the duel would end, so he could not even imagine that anyone would be afraid for him. When he thought M. de Circadia was worried about the doomed victim, it had annoyed him. But seeing the same anxiety in Aline filled him with a cold anger. He told himself that she had not been completely honest with him. He assumed that her ambition was pushing her to accept a marriage proposal from M. de la Tour-d'Azur. There was absolutely nothing that could have pushed him harder toward his goal. In his eyes, saving her was almost as important as getting revenge for the past. She looked at him closely. His complete calm in such a situation amazed her, and she could not help but mention it.
You are so calm, André. I am not easily upset. It is something I pride myself on. But, oh André, this duel simply cannot happen.
She stepped close to him and put her hands on his shoulders. She stood there, her face just a foot away from his.
I assume you know of some good reason why it shouldn't?
He asked.
You might be killed.
She answered, and her eyes grew wide as she spoke. Her answer was so different from what he had expected that he could only stare at her for a moment. Then he thought he understood her game. He laughed as he pulled her hands off his shoulders and stepped back. He thought this was a shallow trick, and it felt childish and beneath her.
Do you honestly think you can stop me by trying to scare me?
He asked, almost sneering.
Oh, you must be completely mad. De la Tour-d'Azur is known as the most dangerous swordsman in France. Have you ever noticed that most reputations are not actually deserved? Chaberlain was a dangerous swordsman, and now Chaberlain is buried in the ground. La Matraillot was supposed to be an even more dangerous swordsman, and right now he is recovering in a doctor's care. The same thing happened to all the other hired duelists who dreamed of stabbing a poor, helpless country lawyer. And today, the absolute best of these bully swordsmen is coming to face me. He is coming to collect wages that are long overdue. You can be absolutely sure of that. So, unless you have another reason to suggest.
His sarcasm completely confused her. Could he really be sincere when he said he was guaranteed to beat M. de la Tour-d'Azur? With her limited knowledge, with her mind full of her uncle's belief that André-Louis would lose, it seemed to her that André-Louis was just putting on an act. She thought he was going to play a part right up until the very end. Whatever the truth was, she changed her strategy to answer him.
Did you receive my uncle's letter? I did, and I answered it. I know, but he will do exactly what he said he would. Do not fool yourself into thinking he will change his mind if you go through with this horrible plan. Now listen, that is a much better reason than your first one,
He said.
If there is a single reason in the whole world that could change my mind, it would be that one. But there is simply too much history between La Tour-d'Azur and me. I swore an oath on the dead hand of Philippe de Vilmorin. I never could have hoped that God would give me such a perfect chance to keep that promise. But you haven't kept it yet.
She warned him. He smiled at her.
That is true.
He said.
But 9 o'clock will be here very soon. Tell me,
He asked her suddenly.
why didn't you take this request to M. de la Tour-d'Azur? I did.
She answered him. She blushed as she remembered how he had rejected her the day before. But André-Louis completely misunderstood why her face turned red.
And what did he say?
He asked.
De la Tour-d'Azur has obligations.
She started to say, but then she stopped and gave a short answer.
Oh, he refused. Well, he has to refuse, of course, no matter what it might cost him. But if I were in his place, I would not have cared about the cost at all. But men are all different, as you can see.
He sighed.
Also, if I were in your place and he had refused me, I think I would have just let the matter drop. But then again, I don't understand what you mean, André. I am not being very mysterious. I can be much more mysterious than this. Just think about it for a while. It might help comfort you later.
He checked his watch again.
Please make yourself at home here. I really have to go.
Lou Chapelier poked his head in through the doorway.
I am sorry to interrupt, but we are going to be late, André, unless you... I am coming.
André answered him.
Aline, you would be doing me a huge favor if you would wait here until I get back. This is especially important because of your uncle's decision.
She did not answer him. She felt completely numb. He assumed her silence meant she agreed, so he bowed and left her standing there. She listened to his footsteps going down the stairs with Le Chapelier. He was talking to his friend, and his voice sounded perfectly calm and normal. Oh, he was completely mad. He was blinded by his own self-confidence and vanity. As his carriage rattled away down the street, she sat down weakly. She felt exhausted and sick to her stomach. She was dizzy and nauseous with horror. André-Louis was driving straight to his death. She felt a deep, unexplainable certainty about this, probably because of all the things M. de Circadia had been saying. She sat there for a while, completely paralyzed by a feeling of hopelessness. Then she jumped up again, wringing her hands in distress. She had to do something to stop this tragedy. But what could she possibly do? If she followed him to the Bois de Boulogne and tried to interrupt the duel, she would just cause a massive scandal for no reason. All the rules of polite society were working against her, and they formed a wall that she could not just climb over. Was there absolutely no one who could help her? She stood there, almost frantic with helplessness. Then she heard the sound of wheels and horse hooves on the cobblestone street outside. A carriage was coming down the street. It stopped with a loud clatter right in front of the fencing academy. Could it be André-Louis coming back? She desperately grabbed onto that tiny sliver of hope. Someone knocked loudly and urgently on the front door. She heard André-Louis's housekeeper hurrying down the stairs in her clanking wooden shoes to open it. She ran to the door of the waiting room, pulled it wide open, and stood there holding her breath to listen. But the voice that drifted up the stairs was not the voice she was so desperately hoping to hear. It was a woman's voice asking urgently for André-Louis. At first, the voice sounded vaguely familiar, and then she recognized it clearly. It was the voice of Madame de Plougastel. Full of excitement, she ran to the top of the narrow staircase just in time to hear Madame de Plougastel cry out in a panic.
He has already gone. Oh, but how long ago did he leave? Which way did he go?
That was enough to tell Aline that Madame de Plougastel must be there for the exact same reason she was. Her mind was in such a state of distress and confusion that she was entirely focused on the most important issue. Because of that, she did not even find this strange. She simply assumed that Madame de Plougastel's unusual fondness for André-Louis was the only explanation needed. Without even stopping to think, she ran down the steep stairs and called out,
Madam, Madam.
The plump, friendly housekeeper stepped out of the way, and the two ladies stood face to face in the doorway. Madame de Plougastel looked pale and exhausted, and a nameless fear was staring out of her eyes.
Aline, you are here,
she exclaimed. Then, completely ignoring all the minor details because of the emergency, she asked,
Were you too late as well? No, madam. I saw him and I begged him to stop, but he refused to listen. Oh, this is absolutely horrible.
Madame de Plougastel shivered as she spoke.
I only heard about this half an hour ago, and I came here immediately to stop it no matter what.
The two women stared at each other with blank, despairing looks. Out in the sunny street, one or two shabby-looking people walking by stopped to stare. They were looking at the beautiful carriage with its magnificent bay horses and the two wealthy ladies standing in the doorway of the fencing academy. From across the street, they heard the rough voice of a traveling bellows mender shouting out his trade.
A raccomotor les vieux soufflés, mending old bellows.
Madame turned quickly back to the housekeeper.
How long ago did he leave? Maybe 10 minutes ago. It was hardly more than that.
The good housekeeper thought these wealthy ladies were friends of her unbeatable master's newest victim. She kept a completely solid, emotionless face. Madame wrung her hands.
10 minutes. Oh.
It sounded almost like a moan.
Which way did he go? The duel is scheduled for 9 o'clock in the Bois de Boulogne.
Aline told her.
Could we follow him? Could we even stop them if we did? Ah, my God. The real question is whether we will get there in time. At 9 o'clock, and it is only a little more than 15 minutes away. My God! My God!
Madame squeezed her hands together in agony.
Do you at least know exactly where in the Bois they are meeting? No, I only know that it is in the Bois. In the Bois.
Madame went into an absolute frenzy.
The Bois is almost half as big as Paris itself.
But she rushed on breathlessly.
Come on, Aline, get in the carriage. Get in.
Then she shouted to her coachman.
Drive to the Bois de Boulogne by way of the Cours la Reine.
She ordered him.
Drive as fast as you possibly can. I will give you 10 pistoles if we make it in time. Use your whip, man.
She pushed Aline into the carriage and jumped in right after her with the energy of a young girl. The heavy carriage was far too big for this kind of race against time, but it was already moving before she even sat down. It rocked and bounced down the street. The driver narrowly missed crushing several people against walls or running them over, and he earned plenty of curses as he went. Madame leaned back with her eyes closed and her lips trembling. Her face looked very pale and tense. Aline watched her without saying a word. It almost seemed like Madame de Plougastel was suffering just as much as she was, enduring an agony of fear that was equal to her own. Aline would wonder about this later on, but right at that moment, her half-numb mind could only focus on their desperate mission. The carriage finally rolled across the Place Louis XV and out onto the Cours la Reine. This was a beautiful, tree-lined road between the Champs-Élysées and the Seine. It was almost completely empty at this time of day, so they made much better speed, leaving a thick cloud of dust behind them. But even though they were going dangerously fast, it still felt too slow for the women inside the carriage. As they reached the barrier gate at the end of the course, the city clocks behind them began striking 9 o'clock. Every single chime sounded like a death knell. Even in this rush, the rules forced them to stop for a moment at the barrier. Aline asked the guard in charge how long ago a carriage matching André-Louis's description had gone through. He answered that a carriage carrying the deputy M. Le Chapelier and the hero of the Third Estate, M. Moreau, had passed the barrier about 20 minutes ago. The guard was very well informed. He grinned and said he could make a pretty good guess about the kind of business that was taking M. Moreau out that way so early in the morning. They left him behind and sped out into the open country, following the road that stayed close to the river. They sat back in silent despair, staring hopelessly out the window. Aline held tightly onto Madame's hand. In the distance, across the fields to their right, they could already see the long, dark line of trees that marked the edge of the Bois. Soon, the carriage turned right onto a smaller road, heading away from the river and straight toward the forest. Aline finally broke the hopeless silence that had hung between them since they left the barrier.
Oh, it is completely impossible that we will get there in time. Impossible. Don't say that. Don't say that.
Madame cried out.
But it is long past 9 o'clock, madame. André is always on time, and these affairs do not take very long. It will all be over by now.
Madame shivered and closed her eyes. After a moment, though, she opened them again and shifted in her seat. Then she stuck her head out the window.
There is a carriage coming towards us,
she announced, and her voice was filled with the terrible thing she feared.
Not already. Oh, not already,
Aline said, putting their shared fear into words. She suddenly felt like she couldn't breathe, and she desperately needed air. Something in her throat was throbbing so hard it felt like it would choke her, and a dark mist kept clouding her vision. An open carriage was speeding toward them in a cloud of dust, coming away from the Bois. They watched it approach. Both of them were pale, and neither of them dared to speak. In fact, Aline was so terrified she couldn't even catch her breath to say a word. As the carriage got closer, it had to slow down, just like they did, so they could pass each other safely on the narrow road. Aline and Madame de Plougastel were both leaning out the window. With terrified eyes, they looked into the open carriage as it pulled up right next to them.
Which one of them is it, madame? Oh, which one?
Aline gasped. She barely dared to look, and her head was spinning. A young man with dark skin sat on the side closest to them. Neither of the ladies knew who he was. He was smiling as he talked to the man sitting next to him. A second later, the other man came into view. He was not smiling at all. His face was pale and hard, and it was the face of the Marquis de la Tour d'Azur. For a long moment, both women stared at him in speechless horror. Finally, he noticed them, and absolute surprise washed over his stern face. In that exact moment, Aline let out a long, shuddering sigh. She fainted completely and collapsed onto the carriage floor behind Madame de Plougastel.